Failure, grief, loss. These are some of the hallmarks of any human's journey, but they are in no way the only ones. We also experience success, joy, and friendship, and I recently played a game which I felt encapsulated all of these complicated things. A game which has gotten a fair bit of exposure here on YouTube, and a game which you already know from the title of this video, Gris. Gris received outstanding reviews from critics and users alike, with the current most critical big name review being IGN, which gave it a 6.5 out of 10. This is heavily contested by the community. You begin the game with only the keys A and D for movement, while more keys are used later in the game for different mechanics and powers. When the game begins, your character, referred to as Gris from now on, is cradled in the hand of a statue, singing. From the beginning, the soundtrack is deep and evocative, sounding hopeful and tragic all at once, but is cut short in an instant by a rumble of cracking stone. Gris clings to the hand that supports her, only for it to fall, dropping her to the ground. As she falls, the color bleeds from the world, leaving it cold, stark, and lifeless. Thus enters the first stage of grief, denial. This stage of grief cannot be rushed. As Gris slowly stands up, you gain control. Gris can walk slowly, head down, but cannot run, cannot jump. When you try to sing by pressing L, a cracked, hoarse sound emerges instead of the beautiful music we heard at the beginning of the game. And so Gris trudges on. Slowly, her worldview expands. You can see ruins. You can see small creatures flitting through the air, all in that same white, gray, black, stark, unfeeling. There is no background track to this segment, only the dull groaning of the wind. You try to jump. Gris collapses to the ground, unable to continue. You try to run. Gris collapses, unable to continue. So you walk, slowly, painfully even, but you continue moving. And eventually, Gris looks to the sky and gathers the strength to begin running. At this point, the music returns. It starts out slow, a few beats, but raises. It ebbs and flows, just as the land and the mist does. But it still feels empty. It still feels dead. There is no life to this world. Not yet. But as you run, you encounter ruins. Memories of a former life, a former world. Gris is remembering. Gris is accepting. Not yet. Slowly. But Gris is accepting. In some of the ruins, some of the memories, Gris encounters a star. As she approaches it, it flits around her, happy, lively. Still stark, white, but it is life. These stars assist you on your journey, allow you to access places that you were not previously able to go. You press forward, the stars forming bridges of light to cross chasms, Eventually, you come across a set of stone hands lying broken in the sand. Gris assumes a grieving position, and the color red is unleashed upon the world. Gris returns to the ground, able to move on now, and the second stage of grief has been entered. Anger, filled with both muted and vibrant reds. Anger breathes a feeling of life into the world that you are currently existing in. It's no longer so stark, empty, and flat, but there is still that aspect of emptiness. Much of the world is still white and black, stark, unfeeling. As you move forward, you enter an area with a tree. A dead tree, but it will not remain dead for long. This is an area you'll return to several times within the game, but you will not be able to access all of its secrets yet. Moving to the desert. Gris's journey has truly just begun. From here on, I will not be giving a complete run-through of each stage. I'll be talking about the points of interest, and I'll be talking about the meanings and symbolism behind certain aspects of each segment. Anger is widely accepted to be the beginning of the healing process, the beginning of moving through grief. Once you have mostly past denial and the anger at the fact that you've lost what you've lost, the anger at the world, anger at what you've lost, anger at yourself for losing it. This is all natural and crucial to the development of grief. Despite this necessity, it is long, it's hard, and it's painful. The desert is designed to reflect that. You have not unlocked any of your abilities yet, so traversing the world is still slow and long. The desert opens with a bridge, which is important as it symbolizes union and connection, understanding, and progress. Bridges connect two previously isolated locations with each other, and that's exactly what this bridge is doing. As you move forward, the angry reds permeate the landscape. Everything is a shade of red. Red has a psychological effect on the brain where we're more predicated towards anger and violence when we see it. And so, red is the perfect color to represent this stage. And we're going to see that a lot throughout the game, where, as a visual game, the color is incredibly crucial to understanding the work as a whole. Progressing further, there are windstorms that you encounter, which throw you back, delay your progress. And these sandstorms can be considered the spurts of anger and frustration that come from bottled up emotion. These sandstorms are not constant. They ebb and flow. And later in the level, there are windmills that warn you when a sandstorm is coming. So Gris is learning. Gris is understanding when these spurts of anger are going to come, and she's able to reach a place of safety to weather out the storm. The visuals throughout this segment of the game are sharp, jagged, broken. Everything points towards a destructive force. From the shattered, collapsed state of the ruins to the creatures that burrow into them and use them as shells. By collecting the previous stars located throughout the ruins, you gain access to the stone change ability, where Gris is able to harden herself and break weaker objects. This stone change ability has the double effect of accessing new areas and also resisting the push from the sandstorms, preventing you from being pushed back. Gris is hardening herself to weather the storms of life. With this newfound ability, a passage is unlocked, which leads back to a stark black and white area with many breakable objects and statues. The ability lent her by the anger brings her back to that stage of denial. Her journey is by no means a linear one, and neither is real grief. There's always the chance and the inevitability of slipping back to a previous stage. It is in this area that upon breaking enough things around you, you encounter what can only be called the antagonist of Gris, a swarm of black birds. These birds will carry you out of this stage and back into the anger. But this isn't the last time we'll meet them. Moving forward farther, the windmills become more prominent. The ruins, the wreckage, the sharp corners becoming less so. They are replaced by more rounded stonework, more complete ruins. To me, this symbolizes the adaptation to the anger, the conquering of it. By hardening herself to survive the storms, Gris has also dulled the anger. She has not erased it completely. Red is still present. The ruins are still broken. But she is able to find peace within the anger. And by activating the largest windmill, much of the red is cleared from the sky. However, despite this, it still has not returned to the flat white. The red is mutedly present, and the effect is beautiful. Moving through the subtle shades of red, you come to your third set of hands. This one granting you the color green, and your movement into the bargaining stage has begun. As the color green spreads throughout your screen, vines also grow. While seemingly only visual, Gris can slide on some of these. With these slides, there's a loss of control. You don't know where you're going and you can't go back. This is the same as in what I've heard of real grief, real bargaining stage, where you don't care what the results are as long as they bring you closer to the source of the grief. When you return to the hub world, you see that your actions have indeed changed it. The tree, once dead and leafless, now has square foliage. And ascending up a set of stairs, you see that you can jump onto this tree to cross into a new area. Jumping off of another bridge and descending down a slide, you enter the forest. This stage is full of timing challenges. It's full of very precise, fairly difficult challenges where you have to make split decisions. It's really quite fun, but it can be frustrating at times. This forest is full of vibrant greens, but also more muted, darker greens, even leaning closer to blue, is hinting at the next color to come. Despite the fact that there is still a prominent amount of red, and you still use your stone change ability to break objects. Gris is moving on from the anger stage, as exhibited by the red still present everywhere. Anger is still a part of her life, but moving into bargaining, she's channeling that anger. After a bit of moving through the forest, you encounter a small golem-looking creature. This creature is initially terrified of you and will run away as soon as you come close. But in using your stone change ability on trees to force them to drop apples, you gain its trust. You cannot progress through the level without gaining the trust of this creature. Just as we cannot progress through life alone. We can't take the entire burden. There are always paths that we don't know about. And this golem shows us just that. It runs to a large stump and magically opens a door. Traveling through this door for a large segment, there's very little red at all. Gris has made a bargain. Gris has found a way to get closer to her goal, and that makes the anger subside. But once it outputs her, not at her goal, but just farther along the path, the anger does return. Eventually, though, this companion must leave you. It has its own things to do and its own places to be, so it cannot accompany you throughout your entire journey. Directly following this, the next segment is primarily and almost uniquely a deep red. Gris is almost slipping back into that stage of anger. With this anger, the timed events become controlled by your jumps. Gris's anger grants her that control over her environment. Gris forces it to conform to her own needs. But moving up and forward, Gris gets through it. Sure, the friend leaving was sad, but Gris was able to move through it. Gris was able to grow and move farther along her path because of this creature. Moving even farther forward, we find that the companion did not in fact leave forever. It came back. It brings us one of the stars that we need to progress. With the star granted to her by her friend, Gris is able to learn the double jump ability. Using this ability, Gris can double jump and glide, and also use little flocks of red birds to fly higher into the air. Using this ability to access a new set of ruins, Gris begins exploring again. After ascending through this new set of ruins, with some admittedly very difficult platforming, Gris finds a massive flock of red birds above the ruins, and ascending through it, she enters an area with blackbirds roosted everywhere. The same blackbirds that she found in the depths of her denial in the middle of the rage segment. These birds form into a much larger, intimidating bird, and it shrieks, blowing you off of the platform and onto a nearby tree. And thus begins your first boss battle of Gris. It's not a battle in the typical sense of the word, but you are striving against this new manifestation of grief to continue ascending throughout the ruins, and eventually using your stone change ability to resist the pushback from his shrieks, similarly to the sandstorms from the anger section. Eventually, the bird is scattered into its components parts by a series of wind chimes that you ascend into, and it leaves. After this, you're back in a red world. For many, they believe that the boss fight is over at this point, but the angry red atmosphere persists. And as you move forward, the bird appears again. It torments you, blowing you to the side, halting your progress, sending you back. But by ringing a bell, you disturb it, dissolve it, and it collapses in on itself, becoming just a handful of blackbirds which fly off. With the boss finally defeated, Gris ascends, using the stars she's gained to form a bridge and leaving the red behind. You find another set of hands, and you unleash blue. Gris has entered the stage of depression. In this stage of grief, Gris is at her lowest, but you wouldn't know it yet. Gris slides down back into the forest you just left, where the almost blues are now full blues. The entire forest has taken on that blue tinge, though the reds and the greens are still there. There's now water everywhere. Many of the trees are replaced with blocks of water floating where the leaves used to be, and you can go right through the sides of these, but upon touching the top, you can stand. Moving back through the area you were before, you reach a lake of sorts that you swim across, and you re-enter the hub world, which has, just like the forest, water everywhere. And you descend. At this point, the player is also at their lowest point because you are descending deep into dark caverns. There is very little of the red and the green we saw previously, only black through the caverns and blue, very deep blues through most of it. there are ruins down here. So Gris has memories of darkness. As Gris descends, she finds two areas where, at certain intervals, a echo of her will be left behind in ice. While this is primarily for the puzzles, there is also some symbolism here. Gris is attempting to freeze her life in place. She doesn't want anything else to change. The depression saps her will to change for the better and for the worse. But moving past this, Gris learns a new ability, the second to last. Gris can dive. She can swim through the water indefinitely. And so you explore the watery depths. Much of the shadows recede. Your world is lighter now. Because this is cool. This is fun. This is something that Gris can use to stave off the darker aspects of her world. But slowly they creep back as the wonder wears off slightly. Gris descends further, and though still vibrant, her world does become darker. In this segment, you must find more stars than you've had to find at any prior point. And upon doing so, a rock grows fins, a head, and a tail and becomes a turtle. Swimming with the turtle, you're able to go through a patch of darkness that was impervious to you before. The turtle emits a soft, warm glow. It protects you. Upon carrying you through the darkness, it retreats back into its shell. Now that you're past the block, it's very linear progression towards the next set of hands. And upon reaching it, another color is not unleashed. Gris exudes light. The cavern walls disappear. A moon grows and shines behind the statue. Stars fill the air. And the ruins are completed. There's ghostly blue structures where the broken pieces of the ruins once were. And Gris has moved into acceptance. Did make this the shortest segment. It really isn't. For me, I believe it was the longest segment to get through. It took me the longest to get through. But that's just because of how empty the area is, how much space you have to travel through. And it really makes you feel small. And depression does that too. It makes you feel small and closed and alone. But after the turtle helps you, the stage moves swiftly. Despite making such amazing progress into the acceptance stage, just like last time, the blackbirds return. They shatter the statue you're on. They blot out the moon. And you're left with no choice but to flee back into the caverns you came from, as they turn into an eel and begin chasing you. They're relentless. Every time you take a turn, they split and cover every single one. They chase you for what feels like forever, until finally you enter an area where it doesn't seem they can reach, where everything is pitch black. As you move forward, you find little lights that brighten when you get close. The world isn't completely dark, after all. These little lights illuminate your way, guiding you forward, helping you to press on despite everything that just happened, despite the soul-crushing weight of your loss that just keeps coming back every time you make any progress. After returning to the normal caverns, where everything is light again, the eel attacks again with a brilliant, if annoyingly executed, jump scare. It chases you directly upwards. No turns, no escape. And it snaps at you repeatedly. Just as it seems it's about to get you, though, the turtle breaks through, scattering it. You're safe. The turtle saved you from the darkness once again. After the turtle brings you back to close to where it originally helped you, it retreats back into its shell and you're left to continue on your own. You progress through the old caverns, many of the previous light gone, but new lights, yellow, warm, and happy from your new acceptance. These guide your way. And so you return to the hub area, where the restoration of the ruins grants you access to ruins in the sky. This is an incredibly peaceful place, almost more so than the forest, but purely for the reason that it all looks so smooth and beautiful, and the music is barely even present anymore, and it lends this quiet feeling of peace. Moving through, you still use all of the previous abilities. You glide, you break, and you swim. And moving forward, you illuminate areas of the ruins that don't seem to be present normally, both through using glowing yellow flocks of birds and fireflies that flit around you like the stars you so frequently collect. And speaking of these stars, there are only 2 that you need to collect. And in order to collect both of them, you must pass through areas of perfect symmetry, or near perfect symmetry, using a line of gravity in the sky to swap between one and the other. Even if your world flips upside down and everything seems confusing, it's still beautiful and you can still progress. After collecting these 2 stars, you unlock your final ability, and Gris regains her voice. Gris can sing now. Her singing awakens the world around her. The peacocks you see spread their feathers. The flowers grow, vines, everything comes to life. After progressing through the ruins for a very long time, using the music to revitalize the world around you, you ascend a staircase of light and activate what appears to be the center of the world, flipping it and depositing you back in the hub area, which you can now revitalize with your song. However, you don't need to revitalize anything anymore. The bridge you were creating in the sky this entire time is completed. Ascending to it, Gris pauses and looks back at the world she's traversed for so long. And the birds return. The black, cursed birds. And they turn into you. this dark, massive version of you screams, absorbing everything, leaving the screen a blank white slate. Gris falls, and it swoops below her, swallowing her up in darkness. And now we move on to the end of Gris. The ending opens with a black screen. As pieces of rubble slowly appear and drift past, Gris swims upwards. Does nothing but swim upwards. Once you break the surface of the blackness, you see that the world is once again monochrome. It is gray, white, black, dead, empty. But you still have the things you learned along the way. And so you climb the fragmented rubble and come to the pieces of the hand that once supported you. Amidst all of it, amidst all of the loss, Gris begins to sing again. Sing the song that revitalized the world. And the pieces of the statue start coming back together. But the darkness doesn't like that. The darkness doesn't want you to progress. So it begins rising, climbing the statue, filling the ground. It becomes an ocean of black that continues rising despite your singing. When I was playing this segment and this cutscene played, I was willing the statue to build faster. I knew that if it did before the darkness overtook everything, then it would be fine. But just as the statue is completing, the darkness swallows up Gris. Her voice is extinguished. But the statue's voice returns. It blasts away the darkness with just a few quick notes. And Gris sheds the last of the darkness on her and joins in the song. Their singing brings everything back. It paints the correct colors across the desert, the forest, and the caves, and the sky. Everything is complete and beautiful now. And Gris hugs the statue one last time as it deposits her in front of the bridge of light leading into the sky. She ascends it, not once looking back, and disappears among the clouds. And thus Gris ends. The ending of Gris can be taken a few ways. To some, Gris died then and there, accepted her fate and moved on into the afterlife. To me, though, this world that you've been exploring is Gris's grief. She's been moving through it. Representations of life, but not life itself. And this ascending into the clouds is her growing above and beyond the grief, becoming a person separate from it. She still has it and the things it taught her and the memories she gained, but this world does not control her or own her anymore. Now we come to the crux of the video, whether Gris deserves literary merit or not. I believe that it does. Despite not being literary in nature, it does convey a story. It entertains the audience. It doesn't conform to the expectations of a single genre. It is as linear as a visual novel, while still having the mechanics of a game, and its visuals are stunning, and it does it all with no voice lines. I don't believe that something needs to have been judged to have artistic quality by the literary community, despite the fact that Gris does in fact have incredible artistic quality. As I've said several times, the visuals are stunning throughout the entire game. Gris was published over 5 years ago. While that's not a very long time in terms of society in general, it is a long enough time that it can be said to have stood the test of time. People are still playing this, leaving positive reviews, and walking away entertained. It has thematic depth. You can play through this without taking anything away from it. You can just play through it. I've seen reviews where people have just played through it and walked away like the mechanics were dumb. It was really empty. There wasn't really a lot of choice. But if you really study it, and if you dig deep into the symbolism and the meaning behind the different pieces, then it has very real applicability. With all of these, it's easy to say that something has literary merit, but throughout this video, I've walked you through a game that says everything it needs to say with merely music and imagery. And thus, I do believe that Gris deserves a place within the literary canon.